was underway. Stamps his authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong.
On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch.
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this. Ladies and gentlemen, the championship takes another twist, another turn, and well, it's specifically going to have the longest calendar on the circuit to be taking those turns. Welcome along to round number 7 of the season here at Belgium. And well, my name is Joseph Black to take you through it as per usual. Alongside me will be Owen Boldero, but he's not here quite yet. And well, it's the final race before the halfway point of the season. And we've had a fascinating season so far to contend with. Owen, I believe I've just heard you.
I am here.
Wonderful. We are live now. So, well, I mean, it's good to see you back, firstly, which is, of course, something that everybody would have wanted, especially after the brain rot that I delivered at Silverstone last week. And he's just left, so let's hope that he's going to be rejoining at some point. But that was perfect timing, and we're going to be almost into the session. Of course, it's going to look like the shortest race of the season because of the lap count, but we all know that that's the case. Owen,
I clicked the wrong button.
What was that?
I said I clicked the wrong button. I accidentally clicked. Because I thought I should just acknowledge at the start of the stream. My microphone is probably going to sound a little bit different, probably worse than it does ordinarily. Fortunately, I'm not near my computer at the moment. So I'm talking on my Xbox and headset. Unfortunately, but it will be back to normal for next week. So yeah, I thought I should just acknowledge that at the start of the stream.
Absolutely. I mean, it makes sense to acknowledge it while it is now. And I mean, as I said, I did notice, this was before broadcast, but I did notice as he came into the box. But we're going to be having, apparently, 10 drivers tonight. We've got 8 as it stands, and that is going to provide an opportunity for a lot of drivers to pick up points here this evening.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody is going to be guaranteed points, whether or not we're waiting on whether Stephen Snell will race. He said he's going to try and make it back for this race, but it's not 100% whether he will race or not. But with just 10 drivers, it's just about being careful, making sure you finish the race. So for people like Luca, who of course Luca has been trying less assists so far this season, it's just a matter of getting to the end of the race.
It certainly is. And well, I'm seeing, and hopefully you're going to be helping us with more clarity on the situation. Why is Brian Moore watching along and not racing this evening?
I haven't got the foggiest, I will be honest. I think he's accidentally done that by accident.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, well, we could have had a 3-person comms box. The last time we did that, it went very well. Of course, Edward Hunter alongside us. A neighbouring country in Austria. So just a little bit of a different one for you. There we go. Brian's noticed. I'd assume that you've notified him or someone along those lines. Yeah, you notified him. I've just seen that. And well, we've got our 9
spammed
drivers
him into Discord.
Well, I mean, there's ways to get through to drivers, but we do have 9 here this evening. And well, there's of course, as you say, Stephen Snell, a notable driver that's missing as it stands. And well, let's hope that he's going to be able to get back in before qualifying, and well, before the end of qualifying at the very least, because I know qualifying is about to get going in just a couple of moments' time, and then we're going to get the chance to have a look at what the drivers are going to be capable of around Belgium. Of course, last time out at Belgium, we had a sprint race, and it was won by Ethan Shackleton. Could we be seeing the similar sort of heroics tonight as Cenk appears to be stretching away?
Yeah, well, a sprint weekend brings some slightly different approach to what you do for a main race. And of course, as you said, Ethan Shackleton won the sprint race last time out. So I think it's going to be a very, very interesting one. Ethan Shackleton generally runs quite strong around this circuit, but I have also been in the same league race as Andrea Cenkovan around here, and he was very, very quick. I mean, another person who is very, very quick around here is Stephen Snell, but of course he is not racing tonight, so that is a great opportunity for one of the Ferraris to win, and that is what I believe will happen. One of the Ferraris will take victory tonight.
Yeah, of course, it's something that we've gotten very used to over the last few seasons, the Ferraris being at the very top of the field, and just a couple of moments' time, we're going to get the chance to have a look at how the standings stack up, and well, you'll see exactly why we make the point about Ferrari being dominant. But as it stands, we're about to head to the race day, so we're going to get the opportunity to take you trackside for the Belgian Grand Prix. You know what I didn't notice until last week? I didn't notice quite how loud the stinger sound was, the switch between the Almost Pro Championship stream card and the actual stream itself. So that's why I had a brief pause there, and well, as opposed to my regular speaking over it. But as well, it's been pointed out, the drivers are on the intermediate, or they're on the soft compound tyres, potentially intermediate conditions. It looks like it is, and it certainly is raining out on the circuit.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just jumping on board with Dan Riley at the moment, and it does look relatively greasy, I think. By the time they get round a full lap of this circuit, you know, this circuit being a 1 minute 44, 1 minute 43 in the race, and then of course a 1 minute 42, 41 in qualifying if you're quick enough. I don't think by the time they get to the end of the lap it will be dry conditions. I think the Inters probably for now are the better tyre to go onto, purely because I feel like softs just won't hold enough heat in them for a full lap.
It does feel that way, and well, that's why I think a lot of these drivers have gone out on soft straight away. There's no risks really to be running on the soft condition at this point of the race, or sorry, the soft compounded tyre at this point in the race, just because, or this point in the qualifying session even, as well, it's just, you know, worth trying to set a time. If you can't set a time, doesn't matter, you still got whatever it would be, 12 minutes to set a time. But well, DRS being disabled, it has now switched over to the intermediate conditions as far as the race directors are concerned, and Dan Riley is certainly towing his way around the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. But I mean, he's in the final sector now, and he's going to see what he's going to be able to do regardless. I think those on the softs, it makes sense for why not just have a go at it anyway. And well, Dan Riley, Connor Stewart Wood, it is Connor, Paul Garung, and well, it's going to be Ethan Shackleton and Burt Welly as well on those soft tyres to start off with, and Dan Riley is going to go for a lap. And we'll see where this stacks up against the Inter runners. This is an interesting gamble that has been made by some of the drivers, led out, of course, by Dan. And that is why we're watching on with him at the moment as he heads through the first sector and up the hill through Eau Rouge.
Yeah, it's not looked too bad so far, but it's going to be sector 2 as all. He had to lift off the throttle so much. And there we are. I think that is the telltale sign that it is no longer dry conditions. I said by the time they got towards the end of the lap it was going to be into conditions, but it's come even sooner than expected, and Dan Riley just cannot get the car turned. It has got so wet so quickly, so those on the intermediate tyres will have a great advantage in these first set of runs. And I think if you can get your run in here early, you're going to get the best of the conditions on those inter tyres, and it might just be a case of retiring towards the start of qualifying.
It may well have been more of a gamble than I made it out to be for these drivers heading out on the circuit and heading around a lap of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. Dan Riley then is certainly driving around a more greasy looking circuit than it was before, and he is very much struggling with the traction at the moment, and I would be surprised if he even attempts to finish the lap before coming in to the pits. Connor Stewart Woodard did go into the pits on the last lap, so did Ethan Shackleton, but Burt Welly, Paul Garung and Dan Riley decided to chance it anyway, and they are the ones struggling the most down on the circuit, I think it's fair to say. We'll see what these times are, but Dan Riley in the second sector has backed out of it now, and well, I'll turn my attention for now to Paul Garung, who appears to be, is he trying to settle up? I'm not sure. That's the pace of the tyres at this point in time. But yeah, it's certainly not looking like the best gamble. So we'll have a look at Brian Moore. We'll see what Brian Moore's doing in the first sector. It's a 33.5. It looks a bit more promising.
And I can tell you, Kyle, unfortunately, got stuck behind Paul Garung, who just has absolutely no pace on those tyres. So Kyle has now backed out of his lap. But one thing I can tell you, I was having a look at telemetry, and coming out of sector 1 onto that right-hander into sector 2, so it's what, turn 4, turn 5? Not Brian, sorry, Kyle was 19 miles an hour faster at the midpoint of the corner compared to Dan Riley. Of course, it was the first on those soft tyres. So Inter's 100% the faster tyre now, and it has got so wet so quickly.
Seems to be a quirk of the F1 games over the last few years. The conditions seem to switch on a dime, and that is exactly what we've seen today.
Definitely.
It's something that I've noticed over the last year has sort of been phased out. It's sort of become a little bit more mixed, but as it stands, that is the way that these conditions have gone today. And Brian Moore is allegedly purple in the second sector, but we'll see how this time actually stacks up against the rest of this field. The final two corners then beckon for the kick Sauber, and he slides his way through the bus stop chicane, just trying to find any semblance of traction. And out of the final corner, it's going to be around a 2-minute lap time, and it's going to be a 1:59.953 that takes him up to the front, and it takes him 16 seconds ahead of the only driver who was able to set a time in the end on those softs, Paul Garung.
Goes to the top of the standing, the 1:58.389, so 1.6 seconds faster than Brian Moore, and that's something we've got used to seeing with Andrea Chenkovan. He picked the right tyres and got himself to the top of the timing sheets, and realistically, with it just getting wetter and wetter, that might just be pole position settled, because those that could have potentially challenged for it, such as, of course, Paul Garung, Dan Riley, Ethan Shackleton, are going to get worse conditions than Andrea Chenkovan had. As Ethan Shackleton is now on a lap, we'll keep an eye on it, because that could be a telltale sign of what the conditions are doing.
Yeah, whether they're getting better or worse, and it certainly looks like, at least on the circuit, that they are getting just that bit worse. But the dry line will start to form, and so the fortunes will start to twist, I think, towards the end of the session. But certainly at this point, it feels as though going out earlier on was the better plan. And Ethan Shackleton heading through the second sector now, and didn't quite catch what his first sector time was, but it didn't look too terrible. But it still looked, I think, a little bit worse than those who came out already, and that's the difference in the strategies, and it's all going to come down, I think, to who gets the strategy in qualifying right as to who qualifies high in the race. Of course, that is generally how it works, but when it's into conditions, when it's a little bit up in the air, it can feel just that little bit different, and these drivers now are contesting with these conditions and trying to make sense of what's going on here in the Ardennes Forest.
Yeah, I think luckily for those that are going to end up qualifying out of position, they of course have the advantage that it's at Spa, and pending it's not a wet race, which of course we don't know if it's a wet race or not, they will be able to get back to the position that they could have qualified in relatively easy. DRS plus ERS and slipstream here is relatively powerful, so it's not the worst circuit for something like this to happen at.
Yeah, it's not the worst in the world for it to be at, because of, well, how open the circuit is, how long the circuit is, and oh god, how I love normal circuits that we go around. The two Ferraris return to normality with a 1-2, and Ethan Shackleton up at the top. He is in a very strong position as it stands, and he's managed to beat out Andrea Chenkovan, which is a good start for the two Ferraris, but especially for Shackleton on a day where he probably needed, in fact, to beat out his teammate, and it's a good start to his evening. Well, at the standings, Andrea Chenkovan 129 points. And he's going to be 51 ahead of Steven Snell in second place, so he really was extending that gap at the top of the field. Shackleton then holds third place in the standings for now, but he's going to jump past Steven Snell if he's able to finish at some point tonight, which you would imagine he would be able to nice and simply. Dan Riley in fourth place with 64, and Paul Garung in fifth, having jumped Stuart Towers, Kyle Stewart-Woodard having done the same thing. Jack Weaver made his way past Benjamin Dew, who of course left a while ago. He is in ninth, and Connor Stewart-Woodard is in 10th place in the standings. Burt Welly, Brian Moore, Lucas Erasini and Harry Jennings will round us out But of course, Andrea Chenkovan's dominant lead in the standings and Ethan Shackleton not being too far off second. Ferrari have taken a dominant lead in the championship, now 46 points ahead of the Mercedes team, and well, they are even further ahead of the McLarens. But yeah, and we'll have a look back at race day, and that is the quickest lap time of all from Bert Wellier, 56.9. Maybe the conditions are actually getting a bit better.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, faster lap times are getting pumped in. I mean, with how hard the rain looked, it didn't particularly look to me like it was going to get better. But it kind of feels to me maybe the first laps of these conditions were maybe scouting laps and they weren't particularly going full pace particularly. So maybe there's still time in a lot of these laps, as Bert Welly has just proved. A 156.951 in these conditions is a very, very strong lap time. And I mean, he's a second faster than anyone else, considering Ethan Shackleton put his 158.0 in after Bert Welly.
Yes, it's well, it's going to get better and better, I think, these conditions. And we've got drivers now out on the circuit. Carl Stuart Woodard, the latest driver to not have a time, and he's going to change that. Although, however, having said that, Luca Seracini's lap time is a 3-minute 34. So I think there's a little bit of room for improvement for him as well, and I wouldn't say that's necessarily a representative lap time. Of course, Paul Garung is now on his lap around the circuit, his first intermediate run around the circuit, and he's likely going to improve on the time that's 15 seconds off of significant pace. Carl Stuart Wood going in there in 7th, and well, he's still got a bit of time to find, I think, as the McLaren.
Yeah, definitely. A 2-minute 1 is not particularly a competitive lap time. You know, he's 1.7 seconds off of Brian Moore, who is in 6th place, of course, as Paul Garung was nearly 3 seconds up on his 2-minute 15 lap time, which, of course, is to be expected. And he's going to gain a huge chunk of time through even corners like Pouon, where he just got no traction whatsoever on those soft tyres.
Yeah, no traction at all, and well, that was the gamble they took, and it was a gamble that did not pay off. But I didn't hate the idea, in fact. I kind of liked it in that it was worth a try. The dry line was always going to form later on in the session, and well, then they would get the chance to try and improve on their laps, as Paul Garung is 12 seconds improving on his lap time in the first 2 sectors. So he is about to be on a strong lap, I think, and this might find himself in with a shout of that provisional pole position, of course, held by Bert Welly as it stands, but that could be all ready to change on a dime.
Yeah, definitely, as here comes Paul Garung up to the line. It's not going to be challenging for pole. It's going to be a 2-minute 5.70. So not particularly amazing lap time, but closer to the field than he was previously. As Ethan Shackleton, by the way, is now on another lap as he comes up to the first sector split. He is a 10.5 up, so still finding a little bit of time. And his teammate, Andrea Chenkovan, is coming up to start another flying lap in this session, which will probably be, unless he does, maybe he'll probably do push, cool, push, I reckon.
That shocks me about Paul Garung, because he would have been, well, he was 12 seconds up, so he was already in line for a 2-minute 3 or whatever. But you'd think that the last sector was where he lost the most time. The last sector was the wettest sector of all. So I think he's messed up somewhere in that final sector corners. And dropped down. But, well, I mean, there is less corners, but you have to remember as well, there's the bus stop chicane, which every driver struggled for traction with, and on the softs it would have been even worse. So still, that surprises me, especially with Paul Garung's form at the moment. Decent in qualifying, and the Aston Martin will be hoping to improve on that into the final run. If he can get around for a final run with just the 4 minutes left in the session, it's going to be tight. And there goes well, Owen, that is not. It's not been the greatest evening in terms of connection issues or anything like that so far. But yeah, Owen has dropped out and he's just come back in.
I clicked the wrong button again.
Oh dear. Well, you're getting used to being on your Xbox again. I fear.
Yeah. So So for those that aren't on Xbox, right? For some reason, they've placed the Discord button in the party section below the start an Xbox party. So my natural instinct, because I play Xbox so much, is to go on an Xbox party because I'm not on an Xbox party. So if I accidentally make that misclick, I just leave. It just makes me leave and starts an Xbox party. So that's something that I'm gonna do a lot. I know I'm gonna do it a lot because it's just natural habit. Because I literally never use Discord on my Xbox, like ever.
You made it sound like you need to go and touch grass, and it makes it sound like that's what they're trying to get you to do. Maybe they've created that on purpose just to try and make you go outside. But I mean, it's of course we'll end that debate there before I offend anybody at home who's watching who likes to play Xbox. Of course, it's an absolutely fine habit. I used to do it myself. I've not retired from playing Xbox or anything. I say retired like it's not a hobby, but I've played significantly less since doing all comms and all these sorts of things. I don't really know why, but I mean, listen. Give me any recommendations, I will get right back on it. And I've actually gotten into the world of actual esport commentary over the last few months. I've been doing some Apex Legends and some Overwatch and stuff like that, and that's been fun. But it reminds me how little I've played. Eh?
I said, you poor soul getting into Overwatch commentary.
I used to be a big fan of Overwatch.
I've never liked Overwatch.
I still play it occasionally.
There are two games. I would commentate pretty much anything, but there are two games I would never commentate. League of Legends and Valorant. I would never commentate them. Ever.
Well, that's nothing to do with Overwatch, but Ethan Shackleton comes around the final corner then, by the way, and he's actually going to come into the pits. It looks like it might actually be wet conditions out there. That's what Paul Grung thinks, at least. Back to the topic at hand anyway. And it looks like Bertwelly might be taking this pole position away. And so Lucas Aracini's found 4 tenths in his first sector, or 3.5 tenths. But we'll see where the V-Carb's able to go and whether he's able to stack up against his teammate. But Paul is now on his outlap. I don't know whether he thinks he's going to find improvement on his 2-minute 0.5 on the wet tyres. I would be shocked if he was, but I mean, I was shocked by Paul Grung's poor last sector last time out. So you never know. These things happen. Maybe I don't know as much as I pretend to, but that's my job, to pretend to know what I'm talking about, and to occasionally actually know what I'm talking about. I remember making a couple of incredible calls on comms the other day, and I was incredibly excited about it. Brian Moore and Ethan Shackleton have called it quits to the session, and I think this is going to be the order that they stack up in, unless Lucas Aracini is able to hook this lap up. And at the moment, as second up on his time, it looks like he can.
Yeah, don't count Andrea Chenkovan out. He has just started another flying lap, which will definitely be his last, as he invalidates it actually going up Eau Rouge. So that is going to be the end of that for him. What about Connor, who is just behind him, as now we go on board with, or I go on board with rather, Lucas Aracini, who comes up to the line and is going to put in a 1:59.0 up to P5 for him. That's a very, very solid lap time, as Connor is only half a tenth up. What about Kyle? Was 300ths down on his personal best in Sector 1.
Yeah, not ideal, and I don't think this is going to be... Oh, and there we go, he's invalidated anyway, so that's going to be the end of his lap. Connor heading through the second sector, and just watching out for a Ferrari that's managed to get out of the way in due course. Kyle retires from the session, marking his one done. Of course, it already was with the timer being up and him invalidating on his lap time, but he's confirmed it anyway. Connor then heading through the final sector, or he will be heading through the final sector in just a couple of corners' time, and we'll see where the McLaren stacks up. He's 6th place at the moment. A strong qualifying performance from him, and I think over the last few weeks I have been impressed with his one-lap pace. But yeah, he's a little bit down in that second sector, and that could be curtains for, in terms of any improvement for Connor, because he needs to find 7 tenths in his final sector.
Yeah, as now he comes up towards the bus stop chicane. If he's going to find a huge chunk of time on his lap, surely the bus stop chicane is where it's going to happen, as he nips it in very, very nicely, actually. I've got to say, maybe a little bit too much curb on exit. As here we go up to the line for Connor. It is going to be a 1:59.9, 2/10 slower than his best, and that is the end of qualifying.
It's the end of qualifying. It's going to be pole position for Bert Welly, who was able to pick himself up at the right time. He did everything right in that qualifying session apart from the final run, and that is the reason that he's found himself on that pole position. It's a very, very strong pole position by over a second ahead of Ethan Shackleton in second place, who was unable to get really anything going. Jenkovan in third, and well, his apparent pace is not translated over to qualifying at the very least, and he finds himself in third place, which is still a decent position, but not what you'd expect of Andrea Chenkovan. And Dan Riley is in fourth with, well, Lucas Seracini in a strong fifth place on his return to the league after a couple of weeks out. Sixth place for Connor in another strong performance. Seventh for Brian Moore, and then eighth for Paul Garung. A disappointing performance he's going to be hoping to build from. And the same for Kyle Stewart-Woodard, who rounds out the field. And I'm not really sure what to expect heading into race day.
Yeah, I don't think, a wet qualifying session, considering we're going to have a dry race, by the looks of it, is particularly representative, especially at Spa-Francorchamps. That second sector is so difficult. And what I imagine is probably those that were struggling for grip of the pace in that qualifying session most likely had dry setups on for the main race. So the likes of maybe Kyle, Paul Garang, Brian, probably have dry setups on purely because, well, as you can see, the race is currently bone dry.
As you couldn't see, you can see now. I'll drag you in, and there we go. There we go. It is going to be completely dry, completely bone dry here at Spa-Francorchamps, and it looks like it's going to remain this way for the rest of the session. But of course, we haven't got any access to any of the in-depth telemetry. That will leave that up to the drivers, and it'll leave us in the dark. But yeah, we're getting ready for the formation lap, and after that, the race will get underway. 22 laps of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, the longest on the calendar. In fact, so long that they didn't want it to be. Or they didn't want to repeat it. They've actually removed it from the calendar entirely in terms of any track's ability to be as long as Spa. But this circuit stays, and well, the history stays with it, although not for much longer, as it's been decided that they want to preserve the history of F1 by interchanging it with a circuit that's only been on the calendar like 5 times or something like that. Not to cast my opinions over the F1 calendar anyway, but I mean, I'm not a big fan of Zandvoort. But regardless, we are going to head to the race day, and well, who's going to come out on top, do you think?
Sorry, can I just interject? They're not interchanging it with Zandvoort. Zandvoort is leaving the calendar, same as Imola. They're interchanging Spa with Circuit de Catalunya every other year. But in terms of who I think is going to come out on top, I'm going to go for Ethan Shackleton. I genuinely feel like he's got the pace today to win.
And my next question to you is, where the hell did I get the information from that they were going to swap with Zandvoort? I think there would have been rumours.
I have no clue.
I think there was rumours, and I got confused. But I swear, no. Anyway, I mean, 2 tracks in Spain is not going to be 2 tracks in Spain for every single year, which is, not the worst decision. But when you've got all those circuits in America, and I'm sure they're going to plan on adding more, that is a whole different kettle of fish in itself. But considering I didn't know what the calendar was going to be next year, I'm not going to cast any aspersions or opinions on what the calendar is going to be in the near future, because clearly I haven't got the foggiest of what's going on. But we are going to head to the formation lap soon. I'm not sure what the hold up is, but yeah, then we will be going to the race day, and to, of course, as I mentioned, the 22 laps of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit, and they'll all be vying it out to get to that top step of the podium that you can see right in front of you. And there we go, the formation lap is underway. It's almost as if I called it out, but the formation lap is going to start, and the drivers are going to get their preparations away. Normally, it's going to be the Ferrari of Andrea Chenkovan who flies off of the line and gets himself prepared as soon as he can. Today, a little bit of a different scenario. Bert Welly is up there at the top. Is there a possibility that actually he prepared himself for the Inter's conditions solely so he could get pole and try and work from there?
Well, considering how far ahead he was in qualifying, being a whole second ahead, I think there is a high possibility of that, which is why I didn't say Burt Welly to win this race, because I've just got this feeling, considering the 156.918 he did in qualifying, that he was running either a higher wing setup compared to others. A 0-0 is potentially possible here at the expense of course, some speed in the second sector. But yeah, I just feel like he ran a wet setup as Brian has left the session. I will try and get him back in now.
Our 9 drivers driving around the circuit this evening. Of course, dropping one out would not be ideal, but it would offer an opportunity for those ahead to try and get some more points. Of course, having said that, it's not exactly like they're fighting Brian Moore in the standings, is it? And, well, I mean, any point counts. So some of those drivers won't mind that too much because they weren't going to fight him on the circuit, that's for sure. And, well, it's going to be... Or some of them would have been. I think someone like Connor enjoys a fight with Brian, and there's been many a fight between those two across the course of the last few campaigns. Of course, when Brian joined the league, they looked like contenders with each other, and that's exactly what they've done. Formation lap is almost finished. We've almost gone around the just a touch over 7-kilometre circuit for the first time of 22, and this is going to be the slowest of them all, unless we get safety car conditions. But Burt Welly will lead us around the bus stop chicane, the final couple of corners on the racetrack, and take us to the grid boxes.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a very, very interesting start, because we have the 2 Ferraris, both on those hard tyres, as well as Paul Garung. So these three, clearly trying to go longer, and generally this race is probably going to be a 2-stop for these drivers, purely because of how high tyre wear is here.
Yeah, I won't lie to you. The last time I raced Spa, and the only times I've raced Spa recently, well, they've been on either iRacing or Le Mans Ultimate. So my idea of Spa has been kind of skewed and warped by the fact that I refuse to play this game anymore. But regardless, we are going to go to the 5 red lights here in Belgium. And, well, they're coming on now here in the Ardennes Forest. There's 5 of them. The lights are on, the drivers are already, and the action is underway. Burt Welly off to an incredible launch, and he's going to take the lead into the first corner. 3 wide for P2, and now 3 wide for P3 as it's the 2 Ferraris and Luca Seracini, but it's going to be Ethan Shackleton that comes out on top. Schenkervan dropping a position, unsurprising, with those hard compound tyres, and they head up to the Camel Straight now with... Well, Seracini and Schenkervan locked in battle. Can Schenkervan have his Vettel moment? Yes, he can, and he's going to be alongside as they head up the hill. Dan Riley's going to pull alongside Burt Welly as well. And is he going to be able to take the position heading into the chicane? No, he's not. Well, he is now, because Burt Welly has gone off of the circuit, and that is not what the V-car would have wanted.
Yeah, there was just a little bit of contact between the V-Carb and Dan Riley, which is what put Burt Welly into the gravel, unfortunately. So I'm sure that is probably going to go to the stewards, as Burt now has front right end plate damage to his car, and that is probably going to be a premature stop into the pits, unfortunately for him. But what a start for Dan Riley, already over a second clear of Ethan Shackleton, and on those medium tyres, which are going to degrade extremely quickly. He needs to build as much of a gap as he can whilst being careful of those tyres.
Yeah, and that's why those drivers that started on the hards will be happy with the way that those starts have gone, apart from Bulgarang, who's not gained much. And actually, he's only gained that position on Burt Welly. But the 2 Ferraris, who didn't have the greatest of launches, are going to be happy with the way that their first laps have gone. Of course, the first lap is about to come to an end, and it's going to be Dan Riley who leads us on to the second one. Could we see today the Mercedes an unlikely victor? But, of course, Belgium can throw up a lot of different scenarios. Connor even, Stuart Woodley gets past Brian Moore out of the final corner, out of the bus stop chicane, and into turn 1. He is going to lead the 2 as Burt does dive into the pit lane. And, well, is he going to retire from the session, or is he going to continue on? It would make sense to continue on, knowing that the trials and tribulations of the Ardennes Forest can wind you down any path. But as it stands, he's going to remain in the session. He is going to see what he can do to recover his race day. But of course, lap number 2, Camel Straight, and it's going to be a move for Luca Seracini. And Seracini versus versus Chenkovan is not the battle I was expecting heading into the race.
No, definitely not. I mean, Saraceni's pace today, as I say that, commentators curse it. He hits the curb, takes a little bit too much curb and spins on it. As I was about to big him up and say his pace today so far had been really good, he spins on the curb. And if people try to deny that the commentator's curse exists, there's Exhibit A for you.
Certainly, that is the two V cars with potentially the worst opening laps that they could have possibly had. And, well, that is going to be both of them pretty much down and out unless anything can happen. Paul Garung and Brian Moore have dropped out of the DRS of the main pack, but Paul Garung, I think, is going to feel as though he's going to be able to get back into it if he's going to be able to make his way past Moore. But, of course, he's going to need to do that one first. He's gained 3/10 in the last sector, so there is a chance here that move is on. And, well, he's going to try and get it down. I'm sure the Kemmel straight with that DRS, unless he can get it any earlier, which will be beneficial for the Aston Martin. As well, we get possible race strategies on our screen. One of them is medium hard, and the other one soft medium hard, which is, of course, neither of those are going to be possible for Shackleton or Chenkovan or Garung, who are all on the hards, and that would simply just be a hard to medium strategy for them. As well, the end of lap number 3, and Ethan Shackleton is 2.5 seconds behind Dan Riley, who's had a sensational start.
Yeah, Dan Riley has had pretty much the perfect start after getting past Burt Welly. He's just been able to break away, and the gap now sits at 2.6 seconds. And I do wonder, with how much Ethan Shackleton is losing down the straight, he's just lost 4/10 down that straight. Could Dan Riley maybe be running a slightly higher winged, slightly lower, winged setup than Ethan Shackleton? Maybe Shackleton set his car up for the more wet conditions, potentially thinking about qualifying. Maybe there's some rain on the way, in this race. I don't know, actually. Did we get a forecast of what's going to happen in this race?
I certainly didn't see one, but I may well be wrong. Yeah, we didn't get one from our weather forecast man, or our weatherman. I don't know why I said weather forecast man. Our weatherman, Kyle Stewart Woodard, who generally provides us with that information when it's interesting. So I think, based on that and based on that alone, that it's going to be a completely dry race. But of course, he may well have just forgotten to send us the information, or decided that he wanted to keep us in the dark. Any of those would be viable and would be quite, I mean, the last one would be quite a funny answer, to be honest, but that is going to be, we're going to be coming to the end of lap number 3 now. The two Ferraris are going to be locked together on the circuit, and they're going to need to not fight with each other. I mean, the two McLarens, to their credit, I think swapped down the Kemmel straight because maybe Connor and Kyle thought that Connor was going to be faster, but yeah, they swapped down I say the main straight. The Kemmel straight is really the opportunity that you get. There's some circuits, like Abu Dhabi's one of them, where the main straight isn't actually the main straight after all.
Yeah, definitely. The Kemmel straight is probably, as you say, the main straight of this circuit, and it's definitely the best opportunity to go for an overtake, as you say. As here we go I'm on board with Andrea Chenkovan right now, and he's just not quite close enough to launch an attack on Ethan Shackleton. He was really, really close in the middle sector, but just can't quite get close enough coming out of that exit of turn 1, coming up to, of course, Eau Rouge. You can't quite get the drive, which is similar to what we saw in real life with, of course, Verstappen and Piastri. Verstappen ran significantly lower wings than Oscar Piastri in the sprint and was able to stay ahead of him purely because of that.
Yes, it's going to be interesting to see the differences between the setups, because of course they would have changed them on the fly, I think, when they saw that it was a wet qualifying session. And well, this is an opportunity for those who chose the right setup to really extend their gap. Dan Riley has dropped down over the second sector, but I think he's going to extend it in the first and the third, and that is the gamble he's taken. And it's a gamble that for him at the moment appears to be significantly off for the Mercedes, as that's going to be the driver leaving, that's going to be Owen leaving once again. That is, I think, third time now that he's accidentally left the call, but well, he'll try and get in as soon as he possibly can. 2 seconds is the gap between Shackleton and Riley, as well, it looks like Shackleton's able to close that gap down. Kyle and Connor swap again, so maybe it's less of a case of them fighting. No, because Connor's gone off the circuit, so it might have been a case of them swapping positions, but that one was a pure mistake from Connor Stewart Woodard that sent him off the circuit.
Yeah, definitely. Mistakes is something which is relatively common round Spa. It's actually quite a difficult circuit, you know. It doesn't look like it would be, but on this F1 game, I'd say it was actually quite difficult on 23, 24, and 25. As here we go, actually, sorry. And Andrea Chenkovan was really, really close to the back of Ethan Shackleton. Backed out, though, actually. Looked like he had to back out. I don't think he fancied trying the outside line. It's certainly an audacious move to make. But yeah, I forgot my train of thought now. I've forgotten where I was going with that.
Yeah, I mean, the typical. Do you say we talk about commentators' curse? That's a curse all in itself to forget your train of thought and then try and pick it up once again. But Brian Moore has dropped back, but behind Lucas Derricini, and we also have the two Ferraris close together on the circuit, as you mentioned just a second ago. And this is an opportunity for them to really see what they can do in terms of working together as a team or fighting each other. And this could define sort of the way that the Ferrari Championship battle goes. Do they fight? Do they swap? I mean, Chenkovan is in a great place to fight. I mean, with his championship standing being so far ahead of everybody else, it would have actually been better for the championship for them to have maybe come together, something like that. And also Stephen Snell to have raced. But if Stephen Snell did not race, then the next best thing is Ethan Shackleton having a strong result and nothing happening for the Croatian driver. But out of the final corner, then Chenkovan remains behind still, and he is going to be third place as they head down the Kemmel Straight one more time. Is he going to get anywhere near close? He was 2/10 back as they headed down the Kemmel Straight the previous time around, and we'll see whether he's going to be able to pull it alongside or any closer, anywhere near confidently enough to take the lead in this battle.
Yeah, I think Andrea Chenkovan needs to take a couple of laps of using no ARS, just recharge the battery, try and stay with Ethan Shackleton, because Ethan Shackleton seems to be doing a really good job of managing his battery in this middle sector, which is what is allowing him to stay ahead of Andrea Chenkovan. You know, his usage of battery has been so effective across the lap that Andrea Chenkovan just can't quite get close enough. So I think Chenkovan needs to spend a couple of laps saving a bit of battery, which is currently actually what it looks like he is doing. He's at half pack at the moment. Just take a lap to off the throttle and just recharge your battery, because then once he's got a full battery pack, he'll probably be able to get past a hell of a lot quicker purely through the pure power of that ERS.
Yeah, and sometimes that's what's forgotten in league racing. Sometimes drivers think that the only way to get through on somebody is relentless pressure, but if you have an attack, maybe it doesn't quite work, and then you go again a couple of laps later, that can be even more beneficial, to the point where that should be the only way you approach it. And Ethan Shackleton staying ahead of Andrea Chenkovan at this point in time, and they're closing in on Dan Riley very, very slowly. 1.4 is the gap between the two Ferraris and the Mercedes on the last time around. And well, I'm sure that Dan Riley, if he's listening in, is going to be nervous. And he's going to be nervous anyway, I think, with the way that the gap is coming down. He's going to feel like very much under threat.
Definitely. Oh, yeah, it's working now. Sorry, Mike's having an issue. Yeah, definitely. You know, having two charging Ferraris behind you on what is going to be the better compound in this race now, coming at you at about a second a lap, so he's definitely going to be under threat. But I think, as we're seeing with Ethan Shackleton, if he can just manage his battery well enough, he can probably stay ahead. I thought DRS was more effective around here than it has been so far. It's just doing absolutely nothing in any of these battles, surprisingly. Maybe that's because of dirty air.
Yeah, or maybe it's because the drivers behind just so happen to have the worst sort of conditions for themselves to be running in. Of course, where the way that they set the car up, Shackleton is now within DRS of Daniel Riley, and the Mercedes will be terrified. Also, at the same time, I think there's a case to be made that now the hards are the better tyre, and that is why Dan Riley has been caught up on those mediums, because those hards are better. And that is also why Paul Garung has been able to make his way through on both the Stuart Wooders. Of course, we haven't seen that, but we saw that that he made his way through, and of course he made his way through on Connor because he made that massive mistake in the bus stop chicane. The two Ferraris very close behind Dan Riley, but Chenkovan trying to shape up a move, I think, and down into the bus stop chicane, and Shackleton remains in behind Riley, but taking an odd line. Can't tell whether he's trying to defend or attack, and that's going to be Dan bailing into the pits, and he doesn't want that smoke. He's into the pit lane, and that's going to be his pit stop.
Yeah, it's about in the pit window for mediums. I think maybe if he could have stuck them out another 2 laps. He'd definitely be in the pit window to go for a medium hard strategy. So he might still be able to do the 1 stop, but I've got to say it'd be very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's we'll see, of course, what they're going to be able to do. Of course, the tire wear is going to be very crucial in this race. As to, well, who's going to be able to do 2 stops, who's going to be able to do 1 stops. The pit lane's not the longest here around Spa, but of course, with it being the longest circuit, it's also not the most dramatic thing that can change your race on a whim. But yeah, the Belgian Grand Prix is a very unique circuit in that sense. Jenkovan and Shackleton, I think they're going to start fighting soon. I'm just hoping that they're not planning to pit on the same lap.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, whoever's in front is going to get priority in the pit lane, of course. I think, as you said, they're going to start attacking each other. I think probably they're going to be into the pits about lap 11, lap 12, most likely. So the scrap is definitely going to start unfolding soon, because, as you said, it decides who goes into the pits first.
Yes, I do think that it's going to be a free-for-all today. They don't look like they're going to work together as a team. What they look like they're going to do is they're going to fight Jenkovan, looking for the outside, Shackleton defending the inside into the bus-stop chicane, and that's going to compromise his exit. Is Andrea Jenkovan going to be able to take advantage? I wouldn't say so quite yet, but I'd say he's in a very strong position to do so down the Kemmel Straight. I will also make the point that as he goes around the outside of the first corner, I will also make the point that he is generally somebody who's going to go for that 1 stop. As there we go, that is the move that Andrea Jenkovan wanted, and he's been able to get past Shackleton. But Shackleton, is he able to fight back with the DRS? He's going to go through on the outside line, and indeed he is going to be able to fight back successfully as well, and that is going to be Ethan Shackleton back into the lead, and well, maybe a tactical switch between the two, maybe a bit of DRS chicken coming into play, but either way, Shackleton's back up into the lead. But Jenkovan, somebody who generally goes for a 1 stop when the 2 stop is the recommended strategy, because his tyre wear management is better, I'd argue, than anybody else in the league. Of course, you could argue that about a number of his attributes, to be fair, but I think tyre wear is something that he typically is very, very, very good at. And well, at the moment, I think he's just managing those tyres, not going for anything silly, just reminding Shackleton he's there, and then hopefully trying to make a move at some point in the near future on his Ferrari teammate. But of course, if he stays behind, it's not the end of the world either, because, well, he can just fight through. He can find his way through pretty comfortably, and that is exactly what he's going to try and do around this circuit as we head on to what will be the 10th lap of the race. We're going to reach double figures, and Dan Riley, he came out last lap on his hard compound tyres, and he's closing down on Carl Stewart Woodard. And, well, the answer to that question is no, not for the time being, and I didn't notice the message I'd received. Anyway, back to the point, and Dan Riley has now gained 4 tenths since the last time I mentioned it. There we go, wonderful. And, well, I was just making a point about how Dan Riley was out of the pit lane, and, well, he seems to have had strong pace. He's already catching up to Carl Stewart Woodard, but maybe he might get, not held up by the McLaren, but maybe he could be a thorn in his side.
Well, I think he's going to catch the McLaren ahead of him at a really awkward time. You know, he's going to be in Sector 2, so he definitely is going to get held up ever so slightly by Kyle, because, well, you can see he's just gained half a second through those 2 corners alone, so he's definitely going to get held up ever so slightly, but he's going to get a very, very good undercut, I think, even with getting held a little bit.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting call as to what's going to be the better strategy here today. And Dan Riley, of course, aggressively going for that undercut, a lot more than any of the other drivers did. And we'll see whether it will pay off. And well, yeah, we'll see. We will see. It's all going to work out, I'm sure. And well, it's all going to stack up as Carl Stewart has actually dropped back behind Dan Riley. I did miss that one, but Dan Riley did get through on Kyle, who's on more worn medium compound of tyres. And, well, Connor, who came in, is only 15 seconds off of his brother now. So I think there's going to be a move there soon as well. If Kyle, that is, doesn't come into the pit lane. We've seen this. I don't know what Kyle's got. He's some sort of tyre whisperer because he's always able to just extend stints a lot longer. It's 2 weeks in a row now.
Tell you what he's got. He's got a wheel, which, I mean, just allows you to extend your stints so much further compared to the controller. I think on controller here, you're probably getting about 7-8 laps, most likely, out of the medium tyres. Whereas on wheel, you could probably get 10 laps comfortably. I reckon he's probably going to be now coming up to about 65-70%, most likely, and now he can be confident that he can get those hard tyres all the way to the end of the race.
Yeah, and of course the tyre compounds have switched here at Spa recently. It's become a little bit of a change that they've implemented into the game and into real life as well, where they've changed the tyre compounds available at Spa. And, well, whilst you might be able to go for 7-8 laps now, it might have been 6-7 laps just a couple of months ago before they brought in that update. But now we're going to switch our eyes and our attention back to the lead battle. Ethan Shackleton and Andrew Chenkovan still remaining locked in battle and locked together. And it feels like they're not going to be able to split each other. And it just feels like it's a case of who blinks first in terms of, you know, when they split, when they go into the pit stops.
Yeah, definitely. I think the two Ferraris, they're being surprisingly tame with each other, I suppose, the best way to put it. It's going to be a case of just who blinks first, really. And I think this will be the lap one of them blinks. Who it is going to be first, I don't know. But 100% one of them is coming in this lap. They've got 10 laps to do then on the medium tyres, which with less fuel on board and it being your final stint is definitely doable.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it feels like a long stint to have, of course, as I say, that Carl Stewart Woodard ticks over to 10 laps that he's done on those mediums. And as I say that, he dives into the pit lane and the McLaren is going to swap over from those mediums to a set of the hard compound tyres that will last him the remainder of this Grand Prix.
He's on inters.
No, he's on intermediate tyres. So either he's a genius or an idiot.
Has he got them accidentally selected from when if he thought it was going to rain? Or has he got that visual glitch where it's raining for him? Really, really weird. Or it was just a mistake like we saw, of course, with Dan Riley a few weeks ago. So really, really frustrating for him. And that, realistically, has probably just confined him to a last place finish.
Oh dear. I mean, to be fair, having said that, there has been a couple of weeks in a row now where I've had a problem where, for example, my co-commentator has a different tyre on that car than what I've got, as we've got a swap. It's going to be Chenkovan through on Shackleton, and I think this might mean that Andrew Chenkovan is pulling the trigger. I think this means the Ferrari is going to dive into the pit lane on this lap. Shackleton let him go because he knows that well, he doesn't want Chenkovan straight lining him out of the final corner and into the pit lane, but no, Chenkovan and Shackleton continue. So I'm not sure what the plan was there for Ethan Shackleton. Maybe it's just to fight him down the straights, and well, he's certainly got a good opportunity to do so. 24 chases 95 as they head down and up then towards Eau Rouge and Raidillon, and out of Raidillon, the Brit is going to try and slingshot himself ahead of the Croat once again.
Yes, now here we go. Up Eau Rouge, Ethan Shackleton is getting a beautiful run. DRS deploys now, and he is just going to absolutely sail past his Ferrari teammate to take the lead back. So, as you said, probably a tactical thing. You know, Andrea Chenkovan was looking a little bit closer over the last couple laps compared to what he was. So maybe that was just to try and reset the status quo back to what it was before.
Yes, and well, I genuinely thought that they were going to be swapping as well. Is Kyle going to come in this lap to switch off? He's not. Kyle Stewart has not come in on this lap to switch off. I'm wondering, does Kyle Stewart stream his races? I don't recall whether
he's just started streaming. I'm going to go have a look what's happening to him.
Wonderful. I think this is going to be his alibi as to why he switched over to the Inter. So it's going to be a very, very fascinating watch for the McLaren, and so that is going to be race. Maybe he'll join us in the comms box for the last 9 laps. That would be nice as Brian makes his way through on Kyle as he heads down towards the Kemmel Straight, and he actually made the move out of Radion, so didn't even need the DRS to do so, and he made his way through. Surely one of these two blanks this lap. Surely, one of Shackleton or Chenkovan is going to blink on this occasion, but no, they continue on, and I think they're daring each other.
Yeah, probably. I was just flicking through Kyle's POV, and it's not raining on his screen or anything. He's not really saying anything in his stream, so I imagine it was probably just a mistake. But yeah, as you were saying about the Ferraris, they are literally dragging each other all the way. And I mean, Dan Riley has got a beautiful undercut. He's going to have an undercut of about 8 seconds or so. So he's going to be so far ahead. And if he can hold it towards the end of this race, he's going to actually potentially be in contention to win this race. If he can hold the 2 Ferraris behind him, who are going to be charging on those medium tyres in a couple of laps' time.
So if he's able to hold it, he's going to be able to say hold that to the 2 Ferraris as he picks up what would be, I believe, his first win in the Almost Pro Championship. It's certainly the first win since I've been paying attention, and that would be an absolutely unbelievable achievement. He came so close at Abu Dhabi last season, and well, this is his opportunity. It may be one of his weaker tracks, in fact, to make his way through and to take his victory home. We have a couple of driver updates to read our way through. I was hoping that one of them was going to be Dan Riley, but he hasn't had a look at that for the last few weeks. But we have heard from Ethan Shackleton, the man we're watching on with now, and well, he's dyed his hair blonde in the hope that this is going to help him in the race, and he enjoys driving Spa, and at the moment he is enjoying, I think he's enjoying the fight with Andrew Chenkovan, at least. He certainly appears to be. Are either of them going to dive in? Nope, they continue on for what will be a 15th lap on those tyres. But yeah, he feels like he had a good race last time out, and he hopes that he can replicate it here today. Then we get a chat with Bert Welly, who did very, very well to take pole position, and ever since then it's just not been the greatest, and he banged on about his race setup basically in his interview. And actually he said, he was asked what was he hoping for. He said P8 on above. As well, is it raining on the circuit? We're going to ride on board.
It is.
Yes, it is. And the two Ferraris have lucked out, and Dan Riley once again on the receiving end of some bad luck.
That explains then why they were staying out so long. They were waiting for this rain. The question is now, is this rain going to be heavy enough for them to pit in to the pit lane? And this is where the gloves come off between the 2 Ferraris now, because you want to be the lead Ferrari. You don't want to get sacked, because here, with these two being so close now, whoever is in front at this point, and when it ticks over to Inter conditions, will be the one who wins the race, purely because you lose so much time at being double stacked. So we will keep an eye on Kyle and see what his pace is like in comparison to the rest of the field.
Yes, he did drop quite significantly off of the back of Brian over the last couple of laps, but he's gaining significantly now. So I think it was a little bit too early for him to dive in, but it's a very, very good idea for him to demonstrate what he can do. And well, I mean, it's a good marker for the rest of the field as well. Are we going to be seeing pit stops on this lap? I think we have to. And well, we'll see whether Shackleton, who is in the lead of the two, does dive in. He's going slowly out of the final corner. He does come in. Chenkovan continues. Is this going to be the Ferrari's crown finally slipping off of him at Belgium with 7 laps to go? His teammate dives in, and I think he's going to be followed in by a number of drivers.
Yeah, as I'm riding on board with Andrea Chenkovan, and you can see it getting wetter. It's not at the point where you can see huge puddles of water on the track yet, but it is certainly getting near to that. Actually, as he goes up Eau Rouge, I can see that, and that is the crossover point, in my opinion, on this F125 game. When you see the puddles of water on the road, that is when you come in. Or if you're still not confident of that, when DRS gets disabled, which I am very sure will be very, very soon.
Yeah, always very useful to get the opportunity to ride Andrea Chenkovan, and he is in the lead at the moment, but it's going to look very under threat, as that's going to be Luca Seracini onto a set of medium tyres. So he's seen everyone else dive in, he's decided to come in as well, but he's not quite picked up the memo, or he's made a mistake, and for the V-Cub, that is an absolute horror show of a moment. Almost like what we thought that Kyle Stewart-Woodard's was, but Kyle's was intentional.
Yeah, well, Luca Seracini in the RB taking some notes from their Ferrari neighbours in Italy, of course, in real life. They did this last year, didn't they? They went onto the hard tyres when everybody else was on intermediates and ended up retiring Leclerc's car and being lapped after, was it about 6-7 laps or something? So, yeah, they... I didn't actually mean to say it. It just slipped out. I wasn't actually meaning to say it, and then after I said it, I realised what I just said. But yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's definitely not going to work out for Luca.
No, unfortunate there for Luca Seracini, and Andrew Chenkovan does dive in. He's lost 1.6 seconds on the previous lap, and well, this might mean that he doesn't just sacrifice second place, he might drop to Paul Garung in third. So the gamble onto the hards looks like, the gamble onto the hards at the start of the race looks like it's going to be the superior strategy. Only 3 drivers attempted it, and at the moment those are the drivers in 1, 2 and 3, but Chenkovan of course might drop down as a result of having to go just that 1 lap longer. Genuinely, I think it would have been a smart idea for him to dive in at the same time as Ethan Shackleton, as now he's come out a couple of seconds behind, so maybe not actually. I reckon had he managed that last lap before they came in better, I think he would have been in with good stead, because if he'd have just been able to build up the gap to, I don't know, 2 seconds or something, then he would have been in good position as, well, there's pit stops around here and pretty much anywhere, 2.2 if you can get it right, and that's surely what Shackleton would have done. And so Andrew Chenkovan will have missed out on that one.
Yeah, definitely, but Andrea Chenkovan actually didn't lose that much. He lost about 7/10 by staying out, so although it looked wet, it wasn't actually crazy wet. And with it not being, like, fully into conditions yet, that is going to have put quite the stress on Ethan Shackleton's tyres. So I do wonder, towards the end of this race, is that going to have an effect on Ethan Shackleton's pace? Because that's also going to pump a lot more heat into his tyres than Andrea Chenkovan.
Yeah, and maybe I've doubted our champion and, of course, our championship leader by quite a significant margin. Quite a bit, as there's a bit of contact between Luca Seracini and Connor. It just looked like Luca ran a bit wide, and Connor looked like he might have just been trying to take the inside line, got it a little bit wrong, and went into the back. But no damage for either of them, thankfully. And so they are just able to continue on like nothing happened, and Luca Seracini dropping down behind Connor. And what a horror show of a pit stop strategy this has been for the V-Carb. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up last, even behind Brian Moore, who is at the moment, as it stands, 24 seconds behind him. That's the sort of mess up that Luca Seracini has had, and well, at the moment he is dropping like a stone down the order. And it would have made sense, I think, genuinely, to have dived in, to have swapped again from the mediums, because it only looks set to get worse from here.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Luca was running in a relatively decent position. I don't really understand why he didn't just dive into the pits, because he is now being caught very, very quickly by the likes of his teammate Bert Welly. So maybe he tries to stick it out to the end of the race, but I just don't think it's worth it. As no, he will now peel into the pit lane to go onto a set of intermediates.
Yeah, he's finally seen sense as Luca Seracini. It's not going to get any better out there for him, and he's going to come into the pit to strap on some green boots. And, well, hopefully he's going to be strapping on the green boots at least, unless he's got some sort of visual glitch, the same likes of which you were mentioning earlier about the weird compound switches and all these sorts of problems that you may be having. And, well, is Lucas Aracini in for a set of inters? Well, it still remains to be seen, as he's now out of the pit lane. He's retired from the session. Right, okay. So it looked like to me Lucas Aracini has gone all the way through the pit lane and then retired. I don't think he stopped in his box. We didn't ride on board with him, but it didn't look like he stopped. So I don't really know what happened there. Maybe some sort of desync. But either way, Lucas Aracini has retired and left the session after a horror show of a day strategically. And we have a look with just 5 laps. The race has kind of flown by, I think, as we've been waiting for the big moment to happen for Andrea Chenkovan and Shackleton to fight. Whereas before, the idea was that we were waiting for Dan Riley and his strategy to work. But now it just feels like we've been waiting on the verge of something for pretty much the entire race, and nothing's really come.
Yeah, these two Ferraris have been really, really respectful with each other, and they just don't seem to be willing to engage in a battle with each other. Maybe they're saving it for the final couple of laps that we're now going into, as Andrea Chenkovan does gain a little bit on Ethan Shackleton, but he's not got the ERS to make it so. So he is going to have to stay in P2, unfortunately. But as you say, it just feels like this race has never really built to the crescendo that it potentially could have.
Yeah, we are at the moment. We are just. It feels like some sort of classical music piece where we are edging closer and closer to the climax of the song, but we're never quite getting there. It's like I don't know if you know this. I don't know the name, but there's like a 7-minute long song that's just like keeping you right on the verge of it getting good, but never quite getting there. And the name escapes me.
Any Oasis song?
In primary school might have been an Oasis song, but I mean that's the story of their career. I think just building to the crescendo of something and never quite getting there. But of course, second best band when they were big. Not so much anymore. But I mean they teased their comeback for years. So they are definitely the archetype of people and things that like to tease, and at the moment we've got Andrea Chenkovan just teasing us, just getting a little bit closer to Ethan Shackleton in the lead, but not quite being close enough to make the move lap after lap after lap. He was able to close in from 1.4 to 7 tenths behind pretty comfortably, but ever since then he's not really made any more inroads.
No, not really. It's just the same old story for the Ferraris. They're just sort of... I think, in all honesty, Ethan Shackleton has lower wings than Andrea Chenkovan does. I think that's literally been the root problem of this entire race so far. I think Ethan Shackleton went a little bit bold on the setup strategy and went for lower wings than Andrea Chenkovan, which even in the wet, actually, has been working really, really well for him. It just feels like Andrea Chenkovan's just not able to get close enough to launch an attack, and because of dirty air being so bad in this game, lower wing setups, if you can keep it on track, definitely have huge advantages.
Yeah, they certainly do. I mean, it's just knowing the game, I think, that's the most important thing at this point in the race, and Ethan Shackleton certainly knows the game. He's poured a lot of hours into practice, and well, Andrea Chenkovan, of course, to his credit, hasn't been a slouch either. But at the moment, it does look as though, today at least, the driver that's going to come out on top is Shackleton. But, of course, Chenkovan loves to prove me wrong again and again and again. And this could be another example of just that. We're heading on to the last couple of laps of this Grand Prix, and it still hangs in the balance, really, between Andrea Chenkovan and Ethan Shackleton as to who is going to come out on top. And I really can't call this one. Chenkovan looks to be pacier, but Shackleton is pacier at the right moment, and that could be the crucial difference.
I'm going to stick with what I said at the start of the race, and I'm going to say Ethan Shackleton is going to win this race. I'm not going to disclose officially, but I'm looking at ERS numbers, and it is looking very, very much in the favour of Ethan Shackleton. And that's what I go back to my point from earlier. He's just saving his battery really, really well and then deploying it at the correct points. As I said as well earlier, it's very, very similar to the sprint race in real life earlier this year.
Yes, we've got 2 laps to go then, and Ethan Shackleton is still in the lead of this one, ahead of Andrea Chenkovan. And Chenkovan drops back to about 7 tenths behind me, gains back to about 5 tenths, 4 tenths, something like that, and then Shackleton breaks away again. But this is just the way that this race has gone, and this is why the broadcast has been absolutely dominated by the 2 Ferraris, just because of how tight they've been on the circuit. And, well, the gamble strategy and the gamble setup looks to be working for Shackleton at the moment, speaking of gamble setups, and this is exactly what Burt Welly did, and that is why he was able to build up his gap in qualifying. And the race, it's been not necessarily the story he would have wanted. Contact between himself and Dan Riley dropped him down the order, and he looks as though he's going to be retaking 5th place off of Connor Stewart-Woodard as Kyle picks up a penalty. And, well, I was going to say that Burt Welly and Connor were the only drivers with penalties. Kyle goes to prove me wrong, but as it stands, Burt Welly only has 3 seconds and Connor has 6, so he doesn't need to get through, but he does anyway, and that's an impressive run out of Radion to make his way past and into P5. And, well, 30.9 seconds behind Dan Riley. He's not going to make a move further up, but he can be happy with the pace that he had. Dan Riley, 4th place, 5.4 off of Paul Garung. It feels like today Dan Riley has been a victim of maybe Mark getting the strategy wrong and Mark getting the weather report wrong, and if you do feel kind of bad for him, because he looked like he might have been on the verge of his first win.
Yeah, I mean, Mark is a bit useless and has been ever since he was introduced. You know, never trust what Mark says. I can remember one scenario in F1 24. It was full wet conditions, and Mark comes over the radio and says, "Okay, it might be time to switch to dries." I was like, "What on earth are you on about, Mark?" You know, the F1 game race engineer has never been that great. I mean, when it was Jeff, at least it was funny. But with Mark, it's just annoying. As now on the final lap, Ethan Shackleton actually has managed to break a second away from Andrea Chenkovan. And, well, that's really, really handy for him. He's under so little pressure now, and he's just going to be able to cruise and bring this one home. You know, he just needs to make no mistakes, keep it on track, keep it clean, and he will win this race.
He certainly will, and I actually, well, I managed to somehow pull my mic out of its socket.
I thought something happened.
The mic cable, it was twisted around my leg. I untwisted it, and in the process, it dislodged the cable or something. Anyway, final lap of the race doesn't matter anyway. Chenkovan, the gap was up to about 1.4 seconds. It's now down to just the 3 tenths. So Shackleton was incredibly quick in the first sector and the last portion of the last on the previous lap. And it's going to come down to the final braking zone in the bus stop chicane to see which Ferrari is going to come out on top. Shackleton has warded off absolutely everything Andrea Chenkovan has had to give him today, and it's going to be down to the final braking zone as to who's going to come out on top. There's 3 tenths between the two. There's a bit of a slide from Shackleton. He runs slightly wide, and the door is open for Chenkovan. Shackleton defends the inside line. Chenkovan's small lock-up, and out of the final corner, it looks like it's going to be a drag race to the line to decide who wins it. Chenkovan with a wobble on the exit of the final corner, and it's going the way of Ethan Shackleton. He steals his teammate's crown, and he's victorious here in the Ardennes Forest. 3rd place is going to go to Paul Garung, who, well, a very, very muted race, a decent strategy, and he comes out in 3rd. Dan Riley, who's been all over the place today, will come home in a very comfortable 4th. And then there's going to be an entire sector's worth of time for 5th. But Shackleton warding off Chenkovan. That's a champions-looking drive. Is that going to be the turning point?
Yeah, well, Ethan Shackleton, even last season, was very, very good at keeping himself in that title fight, even when Andrea Chenkovan looked like the dominant force. He's just very, very... There's just some circuits where Ethan Shackleton just comes alive, and Spa, even last game, this was one of those ones. So fantastic race from him, and he closes that gap to his teammate in the championship to keep things interesting.
interesting, and or tries to make it interesting at least, of course, heading into the race. The gap between the two, ignoring Stephen Snell in that second place, doesn't look like he's going to be staying there, as there is a frozen stream, and I'm not sure what's happened there, so apologies for that one. But now we've shot up from 0 kbps to 9,000 just in the space of a second or so, and that's quite impressive. But yeah, I mean, Ethan Shackleton, he was 52 behind heading into this race. He's edged the gap down just a little bit. I want to see who picked up the fastest lap, because every single point counts. But he's at least brought it down to 45. And, well, the two Ferraris out on the podium, as you can see. The fastest lap went to Dan Riley, so that's going to be completely irrelevant in this argument, to be honest. But, I mean, every little helps. And Shackleton, this could be the turning point for him and Chenkovan.
Yeah, not to quote Tesco there with the every little helps, but it certainly does in this case. 45 points is still a very, very, very big gap, and a very, very handy gap for Andrea Chenkovan to have. So I think if Ethan Shackleton wants to keep this title alive, he needs to keep having races like that and keep plugging away at the gap, as we only have another 7 races left. So that is exactly half distance of this season.
Yeah, half the season left to go, and there is your final result. Shackleton to Chenkovan to Paul Garung, Dan Riley in 4th and Burt Welly in 5th. Then the two Barbudians, Connor and Kyle, Stuart Woodard, and then Brian Moore and Lucas Aracini to round out the field. We're going to get the chance to speak to the man in the penultimate position. It's going to be the man in 8th place who's going to be able to join us here today. So, Brian, I mean, it was a muted race, but an interesting one strategic-wise. What's your take on it?
It went about as I expected, really. I mean, there's aspects of the race where I probably could have got the jump on others. I feel Paul made the right decision signing on the hard tires, certainly, and sticking out till intermediate conditions. That was a very good strategy call from him. Looking back, I wish I did that, but overall, I mean, I feel everyone gave it their everything in the race today, and ends up how it is.
Yeah, it did feel as though everyone did kind of give their everything. I think you're right on that. I think that's a very good take. But I mean, it was definitely an interesting race strategic wise. And do you think that, I mean, there was huge gaps between quite a few of the drivers. Do you think that your position would have been improved by going for a different strategy, coming in a lap earlier, something along those lines? Am I getting the impression that you're slightly regretting the strategy you chose on?
I am definitely regretting the strategy I chose. And looking back, I knew rain was expected, but I thought it was expected during the medium stint of the race, so where the medium runners will come in and be straight onto intermediate. Looking back, I wish I didn't take that gamble. I regret not starting on hard, that's for sure.
That's fair enough. I mean, it was a race where you picked up some decent points once again, and well, it looks like you and Connor are going to come to blows again at some point in this season. We've got a break week next week. How are you going to prepare for the fight with the McLaren in the second half of the season?
Second half of the season, I think I'm going to become I'm going to come to the race a lot more prepared. I mean, today I was not prepared at all. I haven't touched the game in 2 weeks, so yeah, I haven't touched the game since Austria sprint race. Driving wise, so it's been a bit of a break for me. But for next round is one of my better tracks, so I'll definitely be ready for that.
Awesome. We will be seeing you in Zandvoort in 2 weeks' time. So, well, until then, enjoy the break week, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
And then I think the best call would be to bring in we've got a couple of drivers in there who looked like their races were going to be very good, and then they didn't end up quite the level they wanted it to be. Burt Welly is going to be the first one that we're going to drag in, and but what do we reckon about that race then? What's the thoughts? Give me your breakdown.
Well, I saw it was a wet quali, so I knew I had an advantage because I think I'm pretty good in the wet. and so I just went. I tried going for the sauce first, but it just got too wet too quick. So I changed to intermediates and just went for a lap. And
It
then
was
well, yeah. And then at the beginning of the race, had an amazing start, but just got tapped by Daniel O'Reilly and went to the gravel and came last.
Yeah, it was an unfortunate incident that did look like it cost you your race, but I mean, it looked like you set so much better up for the wet conditions. Did you think that even like when that rain was on the horizon, did you think that could have been your turning point back to what you expected at the start?
Yeah, when I saw it was raining, I did see an opportunity for taking up a few places, which I did. So I really was glad for having rain at the end.
Yeah, of course, it didn't quite work out the way you were expecting it to, but I mean, the pace was promising. And how is it looking heading to Zandvoort in 2 weeks' time?
I'm not very good, so I'm gonna have to practice quite a bit.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You've got 2 weeks to do so, and we will be seeing you in those 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much for joining us today, and
Oh,
well,
I wanted to
congrats
say,
on the points anyway.
I wanted to say a comment.
Okay.
I did not have a wet race setup, so 'cause I heard you guys. I heard one of you guys say that I might have a race setup, like a wet race setup, but I did not. So,
Was it just made up on the spot, or was it just your dry setup?
it's my old race setup. And yeah, like I said, I just think I'm just pretty good in the wet. So yeah.
Fair enough. Owen, have you got anything for Bert?
No, not this time.
Well, it sounds like Owen is driving a car, so we'll leave him alone. Thank you very much, Bert, for joining us today, and well, we'll
Whoops.
see you in 2 weeks' time.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
It just sounded like you were on the move, Owen, but I think it's going to be better now,
No,
and
I'm
hopefully
not on
it's
the move. I think it's because I was like finishing putting my headset on as I said that.
There you go. That solves it. Don't think we're going to get the chance to speak to any of our podium contenders today, but we're going to get the chance to speak to somebody who I think was unlucky to not finish on the podium, especially unlucky not to finish on the top step. But, well, Dan, just give me your take on that race.
Well, I mean, before I start, I mean, can I just make a statement? I reckon I'm the most unluckiest driver in this league. I think this race just sums it up, just my luck. But anyway, we start with quali, which I actually was looking really forward to because I was doing loads of practice quali runs, and I was actually surprisingly really fast compared to like 110 AI. I was like 1 second fast, so I was actually quite looking forward to that. But when we get to quali, I mean, I saw it was really dry and it just like went wet so fast. So yeah, I'm not really good in the wets, but I actually managed to get P4. Then the start of the race had a mega launch. I thought I was only going to jump Chenkovan, but I got Shackleton as well, so that was P2 done. Then I was battling for P1, which I did get. Unfortunately, Bert did crash. But if I'm going to be honest, it really wasn't my fault. I've watched the replay. I did say to Bert, like, if it was my fault, I am really sorry. Then I watched the replay. It kind of was my corner. I was ahead. And I did, to be fair, think I got a bit squeezed. But yeah, no. In my opinion, it was a racing incident, what happened. Turn one, but I mean, if he wants to report it, he can. But I looked mega, absolutely mega pace. I had. Honestly, I really didn't think those hard runners would make it to the wet condition. I honestly just didn't think they would make it. I was really, really surprised in how long the hards were, like how they lasted. When I was on the hard tires, I was barely using any tire wear compared to the mediums. Like mediums went off so fast for me. Yeah, it was just my luck really. Yeah, you said I'm not. I was a bit unlucky to not finish on the podium. In my opinion, I was really unlucky not to finish on the top step. But yeah, I don't know. P4, it's still good points, I guess. 12 points. But yeah, still I'm still a bit annoyed about that actually.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. To be honest, it was very unlucky, all things considered, and well, I mean, the pace promises though, and you can always take that positive out of it. 2 weeks time, of course, we've got a break meet next week. We've got Zandvoort. It's a different circuit, but how are you feeling about that one?
Yeah, really positive actually, because I think Andrea is actually not racing next weekend. Sorry, not next weekend, but when we return to Zandvoort. So that's one free possession I've gained. So hopefully, Zandvoort's actually it was actually a race I got my second podium in. So I haven't actually got my second podium yet in this season. So hopefully, I can get my second podium in Zandvoort next week. Oh well, not next week. When we do turn up there, but I don't know. I mean, last time I raced there, I was okay, but I actually have been really impressed with my pace. I'm a lot closer with the front of the field than I was last season. Um, so I am really impressed with that. I just got to really see how well I do in the quali tests that I do when before we do the race and quali. See how I do. I'm much better than I was last season, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll have to see how good I am for Sandport.
That's fair enough. I mean, Owen, have you got anything for Dan? But I think we summarised it pretty well.
No, you summarised it well there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Dan, for joining us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Perfect. No worries. Cheers. Thank you.
And now, of course, the last man, as per usual, we will drag in. And well, I mean, he sort of panicked us when we saw him diving in for the intermediate tires. We thought maybe it was a visual glitch. Nope. As it turned out, it was the right call, but maybe a couple of laps too early. Carl, do you want to just give us your summary?
Wow, I mean, to be fair, like I should have started on hards would have been the call, and I think that was something I was considering. But looking at the graphic, and obviously we run approximate weather, so we don't, it's never going to be bang on. Look at the graphic; neither tire was going to make it. So me myself, and I guess a lot of other drivers figured just do 2 stints on the faster tires before the rain comes in. But obviously that was a mistake in hindsight. Clearly the hards could have made it. Everyone obviously who was on the hards, from what I understand, was able to one stop onto the inters. But yeah, like the mediums were dead. I ran them as long as I could. I just kind of went into puncture territory, so I figured there's no running any longer. I went as many laps as I could. I nursed them. So I thought, yeah, the only thing I could do was the GB strat, go onto the inters and hope the rain comes, but it didn't come soon enough. I mean, luckily it came soon enough because they were about to really overheat. So it came soon enough for me to actually be able to take them to the end, which did get me ahead of Brian, I guess, and Luca. I no idea. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't the end of the world, but I think I could have been maybe 1-2 more positions up if I maybe just pitted probably onto softs. What maybe would have been the call, or another set of mediums, but. Or as I say, starting hard. So I had a great start. So yeah, but to be fair, like I just had to go for something. I was fuming after quali. I have no idea if you got that on stream, but if in case you didn't, I'll run you through it. I was the first inter runner. That was complete by accident, by the way. I thought I was going out on the dryers, but I was on the inters. So I was the first inter runner. So I had the best of the conditions, and so I figured, well, yeah, I'm going to get a good time in here. But unfortunately, Paul was ahead of me on the softs, and he couldn't keep it on track, and he didn't let me pass. And he doesn't have to let me pass. Obviously, he's not impeded because technically he wasn't on an in or an out lap. But he had no grip on the soft. There was no reason for him to not just let me go. He wasn't going to get a good time, and he didn't. He got the slowest time in because, yeah. So I'm obviously fuming about that. I feel like good sportsmanship means he should have let me go. And I mean, unfortunately, he found himself behind me in the race. So. I guess what comes around.
Yeah, I mean, well, karma can be something or other. Not going to mention that on stream, but I mean, it did look like a weird strategy to go on, but it ended up being the one that worked out. I'm just wondering about the wear of the medium compounded tires towards the end of that stint, and especially towards the end of the inter stint as well. Just both feel as though they are a little bit. They both surely were really warm by the end of those stints.
Mediums 100%. There was, I was any more laps and I was well into puncture territory. There was yeah, it wasn't worth the risk anymore. But to be fair, they didn't feel too bad. They didn't feel as bad as the Inters did. So the Inters, I think, were only around sort of 50% towards the end there, 50, maybe 60, but they just felt a lot worse. They were a lot harder to drive at that wear. So when I got that penalty on that lap, and I'm going to watch that back because I'm finally back streaming. I'm going to watch that back because I don't think I went over the line, but. So when I got that penalty and Brian was only 4 seconds behind me, suddenly I had to lock in and not let him close up. But those tyres were so hard to dry. I don't know. He was so quick up Eau Rouge. I don't know what setup he was running, but like every lap he'd close up like a second, and it was a bit of a panicky moment for me on that last lap because he was like 3.3 up to the end, and then I think he gave it everything into the bus stop just to, you might as well got nothing to lose. End up being like 4 seconds off, but. Yeah, they felt terrible. I had to really concentrate to get that to the end. Yeah, it was hard. It was a hard one.
Fair enough. Owen, have you got anything for Kyle before we end off? Oh no, actually, we've got one more interview.
Oh, so you have?
No, I haven't got anything.
Wonderful. Well, we will let Kyle go then. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you very much. Speak soon.
And now we'll get the chance to speak to, our latest race winner, managing to snatch the crown off Chenkovan. How are you feeling about that one?
Oh wow, yeah, thank you. Sorry for the delay. I feel really good about this one. It was, he was pretty much behind me every lap. It was very tense.
It certainly was. It was a very, very difficult race, I would imagine, with, of course, a driver who is naturally going to be putting you under so much pressure. But how did you end up coping with it?
I think he had a more downforce on than me, which really helped me because every time he was close, he wouldn't, if he was within my DRS and slipstream down the big camel straight, he wouldn't really gain that much, thankfully. That, I'm guessing he had more downforce, sorry.
Yeah, it was very difficult to cope with, I'd imagine, with, of course, the pressure coming from behind you. And, it was just, you just managed to ward him off every single lap. So it was a very, very, very strong performance from you, I think. And, it closes down the gap, not by much, but closes down the gap in the championship just a little bit to your teammate to, I believe it was 45 points. Is that a catchable gap?
Most likely not, but I think Andrea said he might miss 2 rounds. So I know I'll be definitely missing 1 at least. So, I don't win very often, but theoretically, if I do 1 more race than him and win, that's 25 points that I could gain back. So yeah, it's definitely doable.
Of course, we will see whether that is the possibility. Owen, have you got anything for our most recent race victor?
I'm afraid not.
That's fine. Well, it was a very, very good performance nonetheless. And, we'll let you go. We won't hold you too long before you go and celebrate. But, thank you very much for joining us today. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you all. See ya.
Well, there we go. Then that was us hearing from our latest race winner. And, that is going to be it for the broadcast for this evening. Owen, have you got any final words before we round off for the first half of the season?
Yeah, well, what an interesting first half of the season has been. Some new faces have spiced the championship up so far, but it is the old guard of the 2 Ferraris currently dominating the spotlight. So it's going to be a very, very interesting end to the season. And with Andrea Chenkovan missing a couple of rounds, can Ethan Shackleton pounce on that and potentially take the championship lead?
Very, very potentially. We will see, as it's a great opportunity. We'll have Zandvoort in 2 weeks' time. But until then, thank you very much for everybody for joining us for the first half of the season. We'll see you in the second. Underway. Stamps' authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong. On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch!
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this.